Morning, colleagues. Oh, that's loud. We'll be starting in 2 minutes, so could you please take your seats? Good morning, colleagues. I'd like to welcome members to the public and to members of the public to this meeting of the Council, particularly those watching the live stream on the Council's YouTube channel. This Council supports the principles of transparency and encourages filming, recording and taking photographs at its meetings that are open to the public. Members are therefore advised that this meeting may be filmed, recorded or photographed. Can I please ask members to turn off their mobile phones to silent or vibrate while the meeting is taking place? There is no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we will make our way downstairs via the fire escape in the corridor behind you. The muster point is at the far end of the building. I have received apologies from Councillors Atkins, Batchelor, Connor, Hay and Smith. And apologies for lateness from Councillors Ambrose Smith, Beckett, Dupre and Thompson. Any other apologies? The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 19th of July 2022. The Council is asked to agree these as a correct record. If any member does not agree, would you please raise your hand now? Councillor Count.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The minutes, I appreciate that minutes don't have to be word for word, but they are supposed to reflect what happened at a meeting. At the last meeting, you will recall we had the very first action log. You'll probably recall everybody squirming in the seats when we had a litany of inactivity and misrepresentation. I can tell you, Chair, that whilst the joint administration may very well be embarrassed by our comments, it is not sufficient for the minutes to merely say, and I quote, "The action log was noted, which included a number of comments for investigation." That, Mr. Chairman, I suggest is not sufficient for a set of minutes. There are a number of actions that were requested to be taken. For example, a simple thing such as, can we have the action log numbered in future? Now, unless I actually go to the video of the last meeting, I wouldn't be able to reflect on any of that. So I'm sorry, but I would ask that in future, the minutes reflect that to a much better degree, and I will return to the action log later on. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Having noted that, are we happy to approve those minutes? Any dissent? Then we'll take those as approved. Thank you. The updated motion log is included in the published papers, as you just heard, for your information in order to report on progress. While I'll not be reopening debate for any motion on the motions log, I will take questions and comments. Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, looking at the actions log, I noticed the Executive Director for Place and Sustainability mentions an immediate audit of roads and footpaths across the county, focusing first on areas of high deprivation. Now, you'll probably remember this relates to a motion I brought over a year ago, and it was kicked into the long grass and was kind of widened out, and some action was said that was going to happen. Well, it's been over a year and we've got nothing at all. Nothing has happened, nothing has changed. And the word immediate, I did look it up in the dictionary just to make sure I wasn't wrong about it meaning straight away, but we have been, what, 14 months now? It's not right that you can knock a motion out, make a kind of platitude about it, and then ignore it forever. Now, I know that there was an update in September, but the update is no better. It says officers are still preparing a report. So I really think it's time that we know when this report's going to be ready. Can it be for the next meeting, please? Can we get on with what we said we were going to do? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Any other comments on the action log? Councillor Hoy.
The mental health hubs, we don't have, obviously we've got a lot of talk about aspirations, and I understand that some of this is CCG and not us, but I think it would be more useful in the action on going forwards to have each locality listed and how many mental health hubs have been opened, because we can't know what success we've achieved until we know how many have been opened. So it'd be useful to have that going forwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? If you wish to pursue actions further, you'll need to contact the allocated officer outside the meeting, but I would expect, Councillor Count.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. My one's the motion from Councillor Ross Hathorn, which was passed by full council, and the update has is marked as complete. It was a letter was sent by the Chief Executive to the Department of Transport on the 15th of August. A response was received on the 30th of August, which was shared with the proposer and seconder of the motion. Well, I would suggest, Chair, that once a motion is adopted by the council, it's our motion, whether it was proposed by a Conservative, Labour or Liberal, and therefore the response should be shared with every member, not simply the two behind closed doors. Could I ask for that response to be shared with the rest of us, please? Thank you, Chair.
I'll agree with that. And officers, could you please make sure that happens? Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so the next item is Chair's announcements, of which I have several. The Council was deeply saddened at the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II on Friday, September the 8th. Queen Elizabeth had ruled for longer than any other monarch in British history and was a constant presence, carrying out her duties with grace and dedication and providing unfaltering public service throughout her 70-year reign. I wrote to the royal family to pass on the condolences of the Council and the entire county. I attended the official proclamation of the new sovereign, King Charles III, along with the Lord Lieutenant, the High Sheriff of Cambridgeshire and the Bishop of Ely at the Guildhall in Cambridge on 11th of September, where I laid flowers on behalf of the Council in tribute to Her Majesty the Queen. I also attended the Peterborough proclamation on behalf of the Council. May I ask the Council now to stand in memory of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Thank you. Please be seated. It is with deep regret that I report the death of former County Councillor Ralph Butcher, who represented the Whittlesea South Division on behalf of the Conservative Party from 2005 to 2017. I had the great honour of officially opening the Ralph Butcher Causeway, which represented the culmination of Councillor Butcher's life work earlier this year. And I was looking forward to meeting Ralph, but unfortunately he was not well enough to attend the ceremony. The Council's thoughts are with his family and friends at this very sad time. Councillor Count.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll say a few words to former Councillor Ralph Butcher. Unfortunately, I have to admit, I never knew him very well as an individual person. I knew him through his work on the County Council and the District Council. And realistically, I want to reflect just how much of a stalwart for public service he was. I mean, I arrived in District Council 2009. He already had 38 years under his belt as a seasoned councillor. And he made me very welcome and took me under his wing, as many councillors did. That was 38 years before I was first elected, and he had started his journey of public service in 1971, ultimately giving over 5 decades of his life to public service. He was much loved and an admired character, and every sympathy goes to the friends and family that he leaves behind. And he spent his formative years working alongside his father in a coal and aggregate business, which he sold in 2008, allowing him to step up and concentrate even more of the time he had to serving the public as councillor. The people he represented lived in and around Whittlesea, Bennett, Coates and East Street, and he was elected to Fenland District Council in 2003. Over the years, he was probably on every committee you could imagine, as well as serving time on the cabinet and ultimately twice as chairman of FDC. At the County Council, he served from 2005 to 2017, representing Whittlesea South. He served on the Highways Infrastructure Committee, the Fire Authority, as well as numerous other internal and external bodies and charities. Ralph was passionate about improving the lives of all who lived in the county, getting behind numerous projects over the year. But his efforts to deliver the King's Dyke Bridge, now Ralph Butcher Causeway, are what he will be remembered for most. Tirelessly and relentlessly pursuing that, I am glad that it has been delivered and quite rightly named as the Ralph Butcher Causeway, as a small recognition of his valiant efforts. Ralph leaves behind family, friends, and here former colleagues who remember him fondly, and may he rest in peace. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Singer.
Thank you. I was also deeply saddened to hear of the passing of Ralph. I remember him from my first years on the council. I worked with him on the Fire Authority, but also just in general council business. He was always a delightful colleague and a very kind man, and he will be very much missed by me. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I now ask the council to stand in memory of Ralph? Thank you. Please be seated. As this is Fiona Macmillan's last full council meeting as monitoring officer, I'd like to take this opportunity to offer our heartfelt thanks for her services to Cambridgeshire County Council. Fiona has been our Director of Law and Governance since 2018, a post shared jointly with Peterborough City Council. In this role, Fiona has steered us through the complexities of the many legal issues which all members need to observe in meetings and in the business of the council. As an experienced lawyer with a wealth of experience in local government, nothing could really have prepared Fiona for her first year of the COVID pandemic, when emergency legislation allowed, most unusually, decisions to take place entirely via remote meetings. Fiona took this all in her stride and steered us through the process so that the business of the council could continue to take place in a transparent and legal way. Fiona has also provided crucial advice relating to issues of audit and constitutional change. As chair of the County Council, I have greatly valued Fiona's advice as well as her occasional correction. I know we will all want to wish her well in the future. Fiona remains with us until the end of November, but this is our last collective opportunity as members to thank her today. I think Councillor Nessinger would like to say a few words.
Again, I'll be very brief, but I did want to say a personal thank you to Fiona for everything she's done for this council over the years. She's had to deal with some very tricky issues and some very tricky moments here, and we owe you a big debt of gratitude for helping us through those, Fiona. So thank you very much for everything you've done for us. Thank you.
I'd also like to take this opportunity to say farewell and pay tribute to Amanda Askham, who for 7 weeks at the beginning of this year served as our acting chief executive following the retirement of Gillian Beasley before Stephen Moyer took up his role permanently. Amanda, who has most recently been our Director of Business Improvement and Development, and prior to that, Head of Transformation, has worked extremely closely with members from this authority during her 15 years at the County Council, along with a period of shared working with Peterborough City Council. For the past 5 years, she has been a key member of the council senior team. Our thanks and good wishes go to her as she moves on to the next challenge. Councillor Nessinger, did you want to say a few words?
Again, very briefly, I do think it's appropriate to say a big thank you to Amanda, who has again given an enormous amount to this council over many, many years. I first started working with Amanda a scarily long time ago when she first joined the council, and we were working together on things to do with Cambridgeshire Music and the Ragged Trust. And she was a great colleague then and has been a great colleague all the way through. And I am personally very sad that she will be leaving us, but we owe her a huge debt of thanks because she's been a fantastic officer for this council. So thank you.
Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to point out to members in the room that if people stand up, I'm finding it quite hard to hear what people are saying. So please, could you take your microphone with you or lean to it or something, because it's actually quite hard to hear. Thank you.
Also, perhaps project would help as well. Percussionist Jordan Ashman has won the BBC's Young Musician Competition. The 18-year-old from Cambridgeshire took the prestigious title performing Jennifer Higdon's percussion concerto, requiring him to play drums, marimba, vibraphone, and even a car's brake drum. As chair of the council, I attended the following events: the burying of a time capsule at the Marley Primary Academy, the service of Thanksgiving for Her Majesty the Queen at Ely Cathedral. My vice chair attended the service at Great St Mary's in Cambridge. I was present for the Queen's Award for Enterprise Export Achievement being given to Zeath Limited in Cambridge, and the Queen's Award for Enterprise being given to Pico Limited in St Neots. I attended the civic service in St Neots. My vice chair attended a civic service in Rushden, and we both attended the High Sheriff's Justice Service at Ely Cathedral this weekend. That concludes the announcements for today. Next is an item on declarations of interest. Under this item, members are asked to declare interest under the Council's Code of Conduct in any item on the agenda for today's meeting if they are not already registered on the Register of Interests. May I have any declarations now, please? Item number 4 is public question time, which allows members of the public to ask questions of the Council, provided that they've given advance notice. Since no public questions were received, we're going to move on to item 5, which is petitions, which allows members of the public to present petitions in accordance with the agreed protocol. No petitions were received. So we'll move on to the next item after a short refresher on how to use the system. Can I remind you about the audio and voting systems? In order to register to speak, you need to press the speak mic button. You will then be automatically added to my list of speakers. If you wish to raise a point of order or a point of personal explanation, you will need to raise your hand. Please do not press the button. I intend to be very strict about both the raising of points of order and points of personal explanation. Raising a point of order means that the member believes that there has been a breach of the Council's rules of procedure or law, so I will require the member to indicate the rule of law which he or she considers has been broken. If this belief is challenged, I, as chair, will be the final arbiter. A point of personal explanation may only relate to some material part of an earlier speech by the member raising the point, which may appear to have been misunderstood in the present debate. Again, I will be the final arbiter. I would like to remind members that when a member rises on either of these points, any other member currently on their feet should immediately sit down until the point has been determined. Next is item number 6, the appointment of an interim monitoring officer. Can I ask the chair of the Staffing and Appeals Committee, Councillor Murphy, to move that the recommendations as set out in the report be adopted, and ask the Vice Chair, Councillor Shaler, to second.
Yes, I'd like to. Thank you very much. I'd like to move the recommendations. Would you like me to make some remarks now?
Yes, please.
Yes. So we had a very constructive meeting of the Staffing and Appeals Committee and interviewed candidate Linda Walker, who has a really extraordinary wealth of experience of a number of different areas and a huge wealth of experience, as I say, which would benefit us enormously. The report sets out the proposal to retain the current remit and reporting lines for the monitoring officer and move to the new role, which incorporates audit and risk management when a permanent appointment is made. But we unanimously supported this candidate and recommend them highly.
Councillor Shaler, are you happy to second that?
Yes, Chair, I am. And to note that Linda also has considerable experience with rewriting constitutions. So if we need such a service, now would be the time. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to open the floor to debate. Councillor Bywater. Oh, no, that's okay. That's obviously a mistake in the system. Sorry, Councillor Bywater. Would anybody like to speak in a debate? There's no dissent, so I think we can take that as carried. Everybody happy to do that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Agreed.
So next item is number 7, proposed changes to the Constitution. Can I ask the chair of the Constitution and Ethics Committee, Councillor Kindersley, to move that the recommendations as set out in the report be adopted, and ask the Vice Chair, Councillor Bullock, to second. I understand that there's a change to the report which does not affect the wording of the recommendation 5, but this change will be included in the Constitution. I'll let my Vice Chair explain when he moves the recommendation. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I hope you can hear me. There are a number of items that Council is invited to agree in terms of changes to the Council's constitution. They are all fairly straightforward. As the Chair's remarked, there is an additional point. So can I draw your attention to page 28 of the Council agenda and to section 6.4 thereon? The section in bold at 10.4 under point 1 should now read, the decision to delegate to another authority shall be reserved to the relevant Policy and Service Committee of Council, unless it is of such significance it should remain a decision of the Council. This will be determined by the Service Director, Legal and Governance, in consultation with group leaders, with any dissent meaning it will remain a decision of the Council. So very briefly, the changes that are proposed, and I think that the Chair is intending to take these en masse, assuming that there is no dissent, is firstly to waive the requirement for members to stand when they address Council. And at the same time, those members who decide not to stand, there shall be no other member asking them or interrupting them to ask them to stand. The reasons for that are set out very clearly in the agenda, so I shan't go into any further detail there. There is a second element to that, which is that when the Chair wishes to halt debate, they must use their gavel, which is something we can all look forward to. The next item we are asked to agree is in relation to petitions and public questions, and it is basically clearing up a certain amount of red tape and hopefully making it both more simple and more transparent for those who wish to organise petitions or ask public questions. The next item relates to casual vacancies, whereby any member who hasn't attended for 6 months without a previously agreed consent from Council, this gives the monitoring officer in association with the Chair of Council the ability to declare a vacancy. We move on then to the issue of recording attendance, and those of you who will probably remember we used to sign a piece of paper at Old Shire Hall. That is now to be dispensed with as the electronic system records our attendance, as indeed do our democratic services officers with a paper record. So things have not changed much other than to not require you to sign your actual name. Lastly, then, is the issue of delegations to other authorities. This obviously doesn't happen very often, but we did have an example of it fairly recently in relation to a right-of-way which we shared with Norfolk. I've given you the detail of the addition to the Constitution. And I hope that that is, again, straightforward. We are asked also to agree a process by which appointments to outside bodies, with some exceptions, are made by the relevant service committees rather than having each time to come to full council. But full council does, of course, retain responsibility for appointing to a number of outside bodies, including the Combined Authority, the Greater Cambridge Partnership, the Fire Authority, the County Councils Network Council, and the LGA. So, members, those are the proposals in front of you. Constitution and Ethics discussed them all at not very great length, I have to say, but did agree them all unanimously. But there has been a certain amount of discussion about the amendment which I have put to you, and I hope that my Vice Chair, Councillor Dr. Boulat, will be able to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I second the proposed changes to the Constitution, and I hope that all members would welcome those changes, which were approved indeed unanimously at the Constitution and Ethics Committee. In particular, I really welcome aligning our Constitution with the recommendations of our Council's Equality, Diversity and Inclusion partner and the wider implications of the Equality Act as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to open the floor now to debate. Councillor Count.
Yes, basically a set of thanks, Chair. As you know, I raised it with the Chair of the C&E Committee and all of the group leaders to ask for that alteration to go in on the delegations to other authorities. There are significant delegations that can be made. For example, the entire Highways Authority has been delegated to the GCP. And I know full well that if a monitoring officer in consultation with the chair was asked that question, they would come and say, no, that's a full council decision. And there are some minor ones that won't be. But that grey area in between was far too important for the council to delegate simply in that way. So I'm glad of the change. It does avoid another denigration of a democratic process. So I wish to thank you, the chair of the CNE, vice chair, and the group leaders for agreeing this change to stop the democratic process being eroded even further. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Singer.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to check something that Councillor Count has just said and potentially make a correction, which is that I don't think that the entire Highways Authority have been delegated to the Greater Cambridge Partnership. I think it's important to be clear about that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think he was providing an example of the sort of decision that might be taken or could be taken, but won't be. Yes, thank you. Anybody else like to participate in the debate? In which case there seems to be a wide approval for this. So if can you just show of hands if you support this motion? That appears to be unanimous. Thank you. Item number 8 is appointment to outside bodies. I move as chair that Councillor Piers Cootes be appointed as a Liberal Democrat substitute on the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority Audit and Governance Committee. Can I ask my vice chair to second?
So seconded, Chair.
Councillor Goldsack.
This is in no way, a reflection on Councillor Cootes, a fine councillor. But can I just ask, is it right that the single sub for both the audit and the governance committee should be the same person?
Would anybody like to respond to that? That's outside my area of expertise, I'm afraid.
Isn't it the one committee?
It probably should be the monitoring officer or the CPCA monitoring officer. Maybe we have to take it offline, but I think it's a fair question. As I say, it's not a reflection on Councillor Cootes.
I'm being told that it's a single committee. No, they're two. Okay, so I think we're going to have to take this online. Thank you for raising that point, Councillor Goldsack, and the monitoring officer will provide a response to you. Thank you. I think given that confusion, I think we'll take Councillor Nessinger.
I'm happy that we can check with the Combined Authority, but my personal understanding and view at the moment, without having checked, is that there's actually quite a lot of overlap in the not in the work that's done by the committees, but in the understanding that people need to have, and therefore there could be some benefit in somebody being a substitute on both committees. And I don't think there would be issues about somebody being on the board and on one of those committees. I don't see any issues with somebody being a substitute for both of those committees.
Okay, so we'll organise a formal response from the monitoring officer, but in the meantime, unless there's any other debate, I'm going to put it to the vote. So all those in favour, please raise your hand. Actually, we're going to do an electronic vote. So could you please start the voting system now, Dan?
Would the chair remind us how to do the vote and also what we're voting on?
I will tell you once the system goes live and I can see myself.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take you through the vote. I'm going to open vote very soon. Members in favour of the motion, please press the button underneath the word yes. Members against the motion, please press the button underneath the word no. Members wishing to abstain, please press the button underneath the word abstain. Members, I'm now going to close the vote. The results of the vote is as follows: 30 votes in favour, 18 abstentions, 4 against. Therefore, the motion is carried.
Thank you. Next is item number 9, written motion. Only one motion has been submitted. Can I ask Councillor Slatter to move and speak to her motion as set out on page 3 of the council agenda?
Thank you, Chair. When I was elected to the County Council in May 21, I was well aware that one of the issues of great concern to my neighbours in Trumpington was the fact that our new neighbourhoods had not been included in the 20-mile-an-hour zone which operates in the rest of the city. Local councillors and residents had been assured at the time that they would be included. When my husband and I bought our present home off plan on Clay Farm, we assumed that our lovely modern neighbourhood with its schools, playgrounds, community centre and public open spaces would have a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit as soon as the roads were eventually adopted. We were wrong. The problem is already demonstrated on a corner of one of our new roads you may be familiar with. Consort Avenue leads from the new Trumpington Meadows housing development onto the Hawkston Road near Waitrose. Drivers turning into this street from the traffic lights are greeted with a very clear, very solid 30-mile-an-hour sign and soon pick up speed accordingly. Perhaps strangers following sat-navs may think this road leads out into the country or is designed to take faster traffic. Not so. These new adoptable streets were designed according to existing regulations referred to in the briefing note, which you have, and I quote, have a design speed of 20 miles an hour and incorporate measures to regulate vehicle speeds accordingly. This 30-mile-an-hour sign must be some mistake, I thought. I was wrong. It would be relatively easy for the county council to correct this oversight, I thought. We just needed a petition to ask the county council to confirm the 20-mile-an-hour limit and remove the offending sign. People were delighted to sign the petition. I was given another full sheet only the other day. The trouble was, there was no mistake. Why is the 30-mile-an-hour sign there? The proper application of regulations by our officers. A few meters of Consort Avenue have, I discovered, actually been adopted. Hawkston Road is a 40-mile-an-hour road at that point, and the default limit is 30 miles an hour. So a sign was required. A sign of things to come for us and maybe for you. If motorists carry on into Trumpington and turn into any other residential road in Cambridge City, the speed limit is clearly marked as 20. So the county council could not just say yes to our petition, as I had thought. Worse still, when the new roads in Trumpington are adopted, they will all have a speed limit displayed of 30 miles an hour. No matter that in one place we have a new primary school opposite a new playground, no matter that our lovely new secondary school is on an invitingly straight stretch of road with a playground opposite, no matter that further down that road it is crossed by a new footpath running from the old council estate and primary school in the 20-mile-an-hour zone to the new shops, pharmacy, library and GP surgery. Official government advice maintains that roads designed for 20 miles an hour do not need speed limits. But we all know, if we are car drivers, that it's actually quite difficult to drive that slowly, especially when the roads are straight or not busy. Most of us do try most of the time. And it is important that we feel empowered to drive at 20 miles an hour, even when the car behind is impatiently tailgating us. And we know we should drive slower, even if we are late, because we know how easy it is for a small child to dash out in front of us. I submitted this motion back in May, hoping to bring it to your attention in July, but it has had to wait until November. Meanwhile, as you will have read in the briefing note, officers already have the first part of the motion well in hand. I am delighted and proud that this council is leading the way among other authorities. I have asked to keep it on the agenda, though, because I think it is important to have this reform in writing and on record today. And we should make sure that developers are all aware of this new regime. There may well be applications still in the pipeline in your divisions that can even now be improved in this way. I'm keen that no other residents in other parts of our county will have to have the problem of funding the missing traffic regulations order that we in Trumpington now face. I look forward to your comments.
Thank you, Councillor Slatter, and for your great timing as well. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Howell.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll second that motion.
Would you like to speak now, Councillor Howell, or would you like
Yes, thank you. Chairman, I am able to stand, but I have, as you can tell, a bit of a laryngitis, which I'm sure most of the councillors will be delighted about. But so if you don't mind, I'll do my speech seated. Thank you, Chairman. Members, I'm going to start off unapologetically with some figures. At 40 miles per hour, there's a 90% chance somebody who's involved in a pedestrian involved in a road traffic accident will be killed. At 35 miles an hour, there's a 50% chance they will be killed. At 30 miles an hour, there's a 20% chance that pedestrian will be killed. At 20 miles an hour, there's a 2.5% chance they will be killed. How many people are killed? Well, last year, 1,608 people were killed in British roads. Children, 17 of them were killed, and 1,252 of them were seriously injured. Members, what we're doing here today isn't arguing about something politically that only we all know about and we have a good fight amongst ourselves. What we're doing here now is going to make a difference, and it's going to make a difference forevermore. And it's one of those things that we make a difference about that we can be proud of. It's one of those things we can talk about in the future. And you know what? We make a difference with people who will never know. With a child that gets hit and instead of dying, brushes themselves off, got a broken arm, and got other people's to sign it when they go to school the next day. Members, what we're doing here is going to save people's lives. And on that, I commend it to the council and hope you will all vote for it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. So I'm going to open the floor to debate. Councillor Tierney first, please.
Thank you, Chair. It falls to me to be the person who says the things that other people don't want to say or frightened to say in this instance. I don't have any problem with individual areas campaigning for and getting 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, or indeed any other appropriate speed limit for the area. Have no problem with that at all. I think that's how democracy should work. If local people support it, you should be able to champion it. But I worry about the endless move towards increased regulation and control. And I worry about it because it's always based on such poor evidence and facts. The evidence presented is always emotional. It's always designed so that you will feel sad or you will feel guilty if something happens in the future. But the truth is that we do live in a world where we balance risk and how we act, how we behave. There's a danger every time you walk out of your door. And the same arguments that say 20 is plenty are true of 10 miles an hour and 5 miles an hour and 1 mile an hour and 0 miles an hour. Because the slower you go, the more time you have to react, the less damage will be done. The exact same arguments are true. So you can say 10 is zen, 5 will keep you alive, 2 is good for you, 1 is fun, 0 is for heroes. You know, we can all come up with the glib phrases that are popular. But the trouble is, we do have to have a balance between being able to go about our daily business and trying to keep people safe. And there are additional problems. So when you create a law that nobody is going to enforce, and let's be honest, the police aren't going to be enforcing this. So when you create a law that nobody is going to enforce and that very few people are going to obey, as was already mentioned by the people proposing this motion, saying how hard it is even to travel at the speeds they've got, what you create is a joke of the law, a situation that people think, well, nobody obeys this, nobody pays attention to this. When you create a law that can't be enforced, won't be enforced, and people don't respect, you create a situation where the law becomes a joke. That's not helpful. That doesn't keep people alive. It makes people more in danger. So I worry about this attempt to make things conformity, to make things all the same, to introduce increased regulation. And I don't support the 20 is plenty movement for that reason. But I do absolutely support highlighted areas that need targeted responses, getting whatever response they need, whether that's 20 or 10 or whatever. And it must be supported with physical infrastructure. Because if it isn't, nobody's going to enforce it and it's just not going to work. And it's an excuse almost that, well, we've made it 20 miles an hour, so it will be fine. It's not fine. It won't be fine. People will still be at risk unless you introduce physical infrastructure to slow cars down. Thank you.
Councillor Count, please.
Thank you, Chair. I support this motion, the motives behind the motion. This isn't a matter about whether I support the motion or not. It's a matter of process for the County Council and a matter for perhaps the Chief Executive to have discussions with the leader of the council about. I don't understand how we can have a motion in front of us today and to be advised earlier last week that money is available for 20-mile-per-hour schemes and to take them out the LHI process. When in the action log today, we have the 40-mile-per-hour buffer zones presented to council in July of this year and told you have to wait until March of next year to get it in front of a committee. The difference, I suggest, is one was a Conservative motion, which has stalled, stagnant, waiting for action, and the other one is one of the joint administration. When a motion gets passed by full council, it should have the backing of the leader and the administration to deliver it. And whilst I welcome the steps forward on this motion, I think it highlights the difference between the way we are treated with the motions we put forward. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry to say that there are members in this council who are inappropriately and vehemently anti-car. And I can say, Chair, that in the short and medium term, I will argue against them as long as there's breath in my body. Long term is a slightly different matter. But this motion isn't about being anti-car. This motion is about being pro-pedestrian. And I therefore fully support it. In fact, I'm a little bit disappointed that the process that Councillor Count was just talking about means that, for example, within my own division, an LHI request which was made 2 years ago for a 20-mile-an-hour zone on the B1040 Church Street, that has not been progressed and still seems not to be being progressed, and I'm very disappointed about that. I have a complete polling district in my division, which is a 20-mile-an-hour zone. I welcome that, but the infrastructure in place, the physical barriers in place which actually cause that 20-mile-an-hour zone to be effective are insufficient. And therefore I very much have sympathy with the comments made by Councillor Tierney that we need to do more than just put a pole up on the side of the road with a number 20 above it. We need to ensure, especially when we're designing new estates, we need to ensure that we do have the physical constraints in place which will actually make it difficult for individuals to breach that 20-mile-an-hour limit. There are individuals, I was going to use a pejorative word, that's inappropriate. There are individuals in society who are so stupid that they will ignore those and any other limits that we place just because they fail to understand what's there, both for their safety and for others. And for those individuals who are sometimes incorrigible, there really does need to be effective enforcement, which is outside the remit of this council, but which we've got to encourage the police actually to take action on. So as far as this motion is concerned, I'm more than happy to give it my support. I just would like to see that where there is local community support, especially an LHI, which has been in place now for 2 years for a 20-mile-an-hour limit on an existing part of the network, that that is progressed as quickly as possible, again, in the interests of pedestrians. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hoy.
Yeah, thank you very much for the briefing note on this. One thing I'm a little bit concerned about, I don't know, obviously probably not so much an issue in South Cambs and Cambridge City, but obviously in Fenland with viability issues, I do wonder if people are going to be able to afford to install some of the infrastructure needed for 20-mile-an-hour zones. I'm just thinking of a road in my division, in Harry's Way and Macanda Close, which has taken the best part of 6 years to get up to an adoptable standard. And that was just with current footpaths and drainage issues. And I wondered, had we also put this additional hurdle, would we still be now? I mean, now we've finally got them to put the footpath in and the drainage, and I think we're almost ready to have it to an adoptable standard. But if we had an additional hurdle, would that then be a problem? And would we still be not adopting it in another 5 years' time? So I do have some concerns on that.
Thank you, Councillor Beckett.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I want to start by saying K equals a half mv squared. And we've heard from Councillor Tierney here about studies or anything else. That's pure physics. What does that actually mean? It means that kinetic energy is proportional to the mass times the velocity squared of a body moving. What that simply means is if you double the speed of a car driving, you give it 4 times as much energy, 4 times as much ability to kill, 4 times as much ability to hurt. Lowering speeds is vital. It's why, as a joint administration, from day one, to Councillor Count's idea here, we started the process of lowering speeds and making 20 miles an hour more available. Part of our joint administration agreement says that we will make 20 miles an hour more easily obtainable for our local communities. It's why we started the 20 mile an hour working group. It's why we've removed the 24 mile an hour mean speed limit that stops people from applying for 24 miles an hour. It's why we've put 400,000 over the next 3 years into 20 miles an hour schemes. It's why we've actually delivered or taken forward 13 20 mile an hour schemes for 2022, 2023, and why we are developing a process now to allow other local parishes and communities to apply for 20 miles an hour going forwards. This motion aims to address a very specific issue. These schemes were designed as 20 miles an hour. We've already seen that we lead the way as a council in asking that via planning, all of our local roads being developed are designed as 20 miles an hour. These are not places that require traffic calming. They are places that are designed as 20 miles an hour, and all they lack is the sign. So I very much support this motion. I very much support the fact that I might be part of the anti-car coalition or whatever else, but what we actually need to be doing is not being against cars. We need to be against people dying. And I think, as Councillor Howell pointed out, just how many people are hurt by these cars. And the stat that I actually keep coming back to, and I'm sorry, I should have said this a little more clearly, is that even without traffic calming, even without anything else, if you lower the speed from 30 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour, with nothing else, with no enforcement, with nothing else, you get a 1 mile per hour mean speed reduction, which leads to 6% less collisions, 6% less casualties, and 6% less people being hurt. One of the most difficult and painful parts of this job as being chair of highways is going and talking to families who have been bereaved. If I have to do that 6% less times, I will be very happy with nothing else. So I support this motion, and I support our drive in general to making our roads much safer going forwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beckett. And can I say particularly welcome the use of equations in speeches. So if anybody else will do that, I'll be very grateful. Councillor Tierney, you were waving at me.
Yes, points of personal explanation, please, Chair. I was named then, and the councillor seemed to suggest that I had challenged the physics or the studies. In fact, not true at all. I'm glad he quoted the study, which proved what I said, which is that the same arguments work for 10 miles an hour and 5 miles an hour. That was the point I was making, and thank you for confirming that.
I'm relieved you're not challenging physics. Thank you, Councillor Bywater.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I welcome this motion. Thank you very much, Councillor Slatter, and for Councillor Howells for bringing it to full council. I just want to touch on my own ward. Sawtry, we've got lots of houses, and it echoes the comments that Councillor Slatter made in relation to the frustrations about reducing speed limits on new developments. It's crazy. Loads of my residents want slower speeds, but it's a convoluted process. But more importantly, I've got experience that probably not many of you in this room have got, is that as a retired police officer, I have been to road fatalities. I've knocked on people's doors and delivered those tragic messages that need to be delivered as a result of a fatal or serious life debilitating road traffic accident. And anything we can do in this council that helps us to reduce those messages, to reduce that trauma to families, then I'm 100% behind it, irrespective of the politics. We have a duty to help protect our residents, and by reducing the speed limit, let's not forget, most people adhere to the speed limits. It's only the few percent that decide to speed, but collectively, and on this process, that we can reduce with our partners speed limits within Cambridgeshire, then I'm all for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Singer.
Thank you. I think there have been some excellent speeches on this, and I particularly do want to thank Councillor Slatter and Howell for bringing this motion forward. I think it's really helpful. I think it's not a coincidence that both Councillor Slatter and Councillor Howell represent areas where there is a huge amount of new building and there are new communities. And I particularly want to draw attention in this motion to the part of it which is around about making sure that designing in 20 miles an hour is part of the planning process. And I think that's an important part of this motion, and a particular reason why it's helpful to have that brought early and as quick and kind of brought forward as quickly as it can be. As a statutory consultee in the planning process, this council has a role as part of that planning process, and there are things that we can do now that will have an impact on the way new developments are designed, developments that probably won't be built for 10, 15, 20 years, but will then be in place for many, many decades, potentially, probably centuries. And making sure that we get the design for those places right is critical. There are many things that I'm sure many of us would like to be able to change about the planning process now, so that we are no longer building houses with gas boilers, for example. This is something that we can do to try and make sure that we are designing in a better future. And I'm very grateful to Councillor Slatter and Howell for bringing this motion. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak in the debate? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. I did press the button, but obviously it's not, that system's not working. Yes, just very briefly, I do want to support the motion in terms of reduction in speed. And equally, as was mentioned by colleagues, also the 40-mile-an-hour reduction as well. And I would hope we in Highways and Transport can actually work towards that. I know there is a working group on the 20-mile-an-hour going on at the moment. I look forward to seeing that report, because it's not just about new residential streets, which obviously this motion is about, but it's also looking at bringing in 20-mile-an-hours into areas where it is required. And finally, I'm touching on Councillor Bywater's comments. I just could not do what he's had to do, or his other fellow colleagues, in terms of knocking on doors with that horrible news that's happened. And I think that's one of the things we've got to remember, that is what we're trying to stop. Thank you.
Can't see anybody else to speak. So Councillor Slatter, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, councillors. I think the debate has demonstrated that Councillor Tierney didn't need to worry about his colleagues being frightened. And I apologise, though, if I upset you by being too emotional. But of course, we are talking about individuals, and Councillor Bywater has made that point. Councillor Count, this is not anti-Tory, you know it isn't really. Councillor Bywater has made that point. There are streets all over the county in just the same position, and it will apply to them just as much as to Trumpington. Councillor Bowden, thank you for your support. I am rather annoyed you took my best line, which is that it's not anti-car, it's pro-road safety, but there we are, you got there first. Councillor Hoy, I don't think it actually applies to the projects you're in the middle of, because we are talking about new residential roads, which by definition should be designed to 20 miles an hour. And the other places where we have to retrofit will obviously have to be dealt with in a different way. Obviously, I'm glad of Councillor Beckett's enthusiastic support and formulae. And I think that's dealt with the points raised. When you read my motion, many of you will have wondered if it was actually necessary. The first part is, after all, already in progress. The second might be seen as putting an unreasonable extra workload onto our officers, and I regret that. But please consider, especially if a member of the Highways and Transport Committee to whom this motion is addressed, what will happen if the second part is not taken seriously and urgently? As things stand, in many new roads about to be adopted, or with tiny parts already adopted, like Consort Avenue that I mentioned, our officers will have to insist that developers put up 30-mile-an-hour signs. In some cases on roads which are routes to school, run alongside playgrounds and shops. Many we hope will soon have buses and bus stops on both sides. Residents will be bemused by what our council is doing. We will be putting people in harm's way. Years later, after hours of work by residents and officers, these same roads will probably be subject to expensive TROs reducing the speed to 20 miles an hour, and the signs will be removed at public expense. If we can catch these roads before that happens, and we can help our officers to streamline, I hesitate to say fast track such areas, I hope that will be possible, but that will be down to the Highways and Transport Committee. Please do vote for the motion.
Thank you. So now we're going to open an electronic vote on the motion.
Thank you, Chair. Members in favour of the motion, please press the button underneath the word yes. Members against the motion, please press the button underneath the word no. Members wishing to abstain, please press the button underneath the word abstain. Thank you. I'm now closing the vote. The result of the vote is 48 votes in favour, 4 against, and therefore the motion is carried.
Thank you. Next, we consider item 10A as set out on the agenda, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority and Overview Scrutiny Committee oral questions, which will be dealt with in accordance with the protocol set out in Annex 1, Part 4.1 of the Council Procedure Rules of the Council's Constitution. The generic report summarising decisions made by the Combined Authority's formal committees is included on the Council agenda on pages 34 to 58. Can you please now raise your hand if you wish to ask a question of Councillor Netzinger, the Council's appointee to the board? You have 2 minutes in which to ask a question and 1 for a supplementary question. Councillor Count.
Thank you, Chair. My questions to Councillor Lucy Netzinger, Leader of the Council, and they revolve around the letter sent by Lord Callanan, Agenda Item 2.1, Appendix 3, which I've already circulated. The Mayor, this is the reasons given by Lord Callanan for why the Mayor had to send back £53.5 million of government money that was supposed to be used to insulate homes. We've heard previous responses that there simply wasn't the work staff, the capacity here to deal with that, and that's why it got sent back. But the letter actually doesn't say that. He points out that there were early extensions granted, business plan failures, complaints by local authorities, centralisation of decision making, which the Mayor was warned about. In fact, this letter is only second to the Ernst & Young letter about the fallibilities at the Combined Authority and how poorly it's being run. So my question to Councillor Lucy Netzinger is, were you made aware of the repeated meetings with Bays to get the matters on track, or did the Mayor keep these things close to his chest and not make you aware about the complaints? If you were aware, what did you do to try and get things back on track so that £53 million worth of government money was not handed back to them? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I was aware that repeated meetings were happening with BEIS over this project. I was also aware that a consultant was brought in to help bring this project back under control, and I believe that they have done a good job in that work. However, it was not possible to get the entire project back to where we would have liked it to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I do have supplementary. If you're aware of all those facts and this entirely damning letter, why was the previous response to the council the money was handed back because there was no capacity in the industry to deliver these schemes? Thank you, Chair.
I think that that was the correct answer then, and it remains the correct answer now, regardless of the other things that may have been included as part of the letter.
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chair. I hadn't intended to ask a question, but I've been quite surprised by the response from the leader on this one. We are told on the combined authority that some figure between about 110 and 150 million pounds is eventually going to have to be given back or not taken in the first place for warm homes initiatives, which were meant to be administered by the CPCA, which is an appalling figure in total. And I don't see how it can possibly be said to be a good result that we end up in that position. But the letter from Lord Callanan really does show that this has been a long time in the making, and it isn't something which has just emerged recently. But what it particularly highlights is the fact that no explanation has yet been given, or no satisfactory explanation has yet been given, as to why the West Midlands, who had exactly the same deal that we had, how they were able to use and allocate all of the money that they were given by central government, and we will end up having to give back somewhere between 70 and 80% of the money that had been allocated to us. That disparity between the West Midlands performance and our performance has never been satisfactorily explained. And I open it up to the leader of the council to try and explain why it is that that has happened and why we can say we've had good performance in the combined authority.
I think it would be foolish of me to try and make that explanation on a question that the councillor himself says he hadn't intended to ask at this meeting and has certainly not given me any prior warning of. I'm happy to try and get an answer from the combined authority officers involved back to Councillor Bowden, but given that Councillor Bowden is himself a member of the board, I would imagine he could ask them for that himself.
Thank you, Chair. I am delighted that the leader will attempt for this council, it's not just for me, but for this council and for the people of Cambridgeshire to get an answer to that question. But I refute that I have just asked this question. I've been asking this question now for the best part of 4 months. So it's hardly new that I'm asking this question and no answer has been forthcoming other than one. And that one is the sheer ineptitude that we've had within the combined authority. No alternative reasonable answer has been given as to our failure as opposed to the West Midlands success. But I wait to see the response that, the leader produces from the combined authority, but would ask that that's circulated to all members of the council because I think we'll all be interested. It's my request that if it is acceptable to the leader, that she does circulate it to all members of this council because I think we'd all be interested.
Very happy that that should be circulated.
Do we have any other questions? Councillor Hoy.
Thank you. As Deputy Mayor and leader of this council, hopefully you're well placed to deal with a project that's kind of some county council, some CPCA. So the We Speak to Access study was started by the county council, but obviously is entirely funded by the CPCA and requires more funding. And I think it's fair to say the project has stalled, and it's particularly pertinent given the last debate and everyone's concerns for road safety, when one of the schemes in that was for the new roundabout on Broad End Road. And for those of you who don't know, Broad End Road junction onto the A47 in half of it's in Norfolk and some in Cambridgeshire is a very, very, very dangerous junction where there has been a number of fatalities, particularly with young people as they often exit it and misjudge the oncoming cars and have had serious fatalities. And part of We Speak to Access was to put a roundabout there. We've been promised it for a number of years. So can you please look into this and hopefully speed it along, if you'll excuse the pun, and make sure that we do have this delivered ASAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. I'm happy to ask for an update on the Wisbech access study. In that context, I am going to say here that the combined authority is facing enormous issues as a result of the level of inflation that we're facing in this country, and that therefore their budget and their ability to deliver projects is much less than it was even a year ago when inflation rates were running at 2% rather than 10%. So the impact of national politics on our ability to deliver projects like the Wisbech access study is going to be quite significant. I'm very happy to come back to ask for a report back from the combined authority on the Wisbech access work and what the current state of that work is. But I do want to just raise here the impact that national politics has had on the combined authority's ability to deliver its budget, to deliver its projects. Just for the information of members, the combined authority's income is flat cash over 30 years. And you will all understand that flat cash over 30 years, when you've got inflation running at 10%, is quite a significant cut year on year on year. And that's an issue. Thank you.
Thank you. But with respect, this project has been going on before we had started to have the trouble, and there has been no movement on it at all. And if we had actually got this, the scheme's been up and ready for a long time, we've purchased the land, and had we have just got on and built the roundabout, we wouldn't be talking about these questions. I would say that it's a case of priorities. Every time there's a project or a scheme that some members want, there always seems to be a magic money tree found. Whenever it's a scheme in the north of the county, suddenly there's no money and it's all the government's fault. So I would just ask that you please put that as a top priority. I understand we're not going to perhaps get the money today, but we have been promised this for a number of years now, and it's a very important issue. So I think it does need to be prioritised.
I would just like to respond to say that there is no sense whatever in the priorities of the county council or of the combined authority that projects in one part of the county are less prioritised than projects in another part of the county. And I think I would be speaking for most people on the combined authority when we say that there is a real understanding of the needs in the north of the county, and a real determination to make sure that we are tackling the deprivation issues and the concerns of the north of the county. There does, however, need to be a recognition that in projects like the Wisbech access study, that cannot be delivered by one body alone. It depends on the contributions from other partners, and if those contributions from other partners don't come in, it will be difficult to deliver it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Jones King.
Thank you, Chair. Given the amount of chaos the combined authority seems to have been in since the election of the current Labour Mayor, Nick Johnson, from investigations into his own conduct and the conduct of his staff, mass resignations, millions upon millions of pounds of unspent government money having to go back because they failed to deliver, the complete failure of delivery of services. Can I ask, does the leader of the council still fully support the Labour Mayor, or is it time for him to resign? Thank you.
So I have to say there's a certain amount of irony in being lectured on chaos from a Conservative at the moment. I really do take that as a slightly ill-timed question from that point of view. I mean, I'd quite like to return it to say, how do the Conservatives feel about the current Prime Minister, and do any of them think that she should resign? However, I'm here to answer and not to ask questions. I think that the combined authority is not in a good place. I don't think the combined authority has been in a very good place since the election of the previous mayor. I think many of the problems at the combined authority stem from the chaos and the poor governance that went on at the combined authority under the previous mayor. I would accept, and I think he would probably accept, that Nick Johnson came in as somebody with comparatively little experience of running an organisation, and he hasn't managed to get it under control as quickly as he would like. But I do think that it's making really good progress now. I think that the new Chief Executive, Gordon Mitchell, is excellent. And I have high hopes that the combined authority will be able to deliver some really good things in the coming year, having had to fix a mess left by the previous mayor and currently having to deal with the mess being created by the current government.
Councillor Tierney.
Thank you. I wasn't sure if you'd seen me, Chair, back here in the corner with the naughty ones. So, yes, I understand that it's quite normal for all political parties to blame the last guy. And as each year goes on, it becomes harder and harder to do that, of course. But I heard a rumour this week, and I'd just like some confirmation that the rumour isn't true. Because the rumour I heard is that the mayor, the current mayor of the combined authority, who it's just been acknowledged is perhaps on shaky status and the authority isn't doing as well as we might hope, might be about to be granted or asked for an eye-watering rise. Surely that can't be possible. Surely in the current state of affairs and in the current situation that there isn't going to be a huge pay rise for the mayor. Can we just be confirmed that that rumour is wrong? Thank you.
I've got no knowledge of that, I'm afraid.
So that's the end of that section. Moving on to 10B. Can you please raise your hand if you wish to ask a question of Councillor Coots, who's acting in the absence of Councillor Atkins, and Councillor Goldsack, the Council's appointees to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee of the Combined Authority? No questions, thank you. Now I propose to take questions on fire authority issues. This will be dealt with in accordance with the guidelines agreed by the council. The report from the fire authority is included on the council agenda on pages 59 to 64. Before I open the item to questions, I'd like to invite the chair of the fire authority, Edna Murphy, to introduce the report.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm very pleased to introduce this report. I think it summarises the notable achievements and successes of the fire service, which is really an excellent and exemplary service staffed by committed, highly trained individuals who put their lives on the line for us. Highlights from the report are, for me, the summer fires were a real eye-opener, because the model of a fire service is to deal with discrete fires, and then occasionally, if there's a major incident, fire services coalesce from all around. But with a heat-induced fire, what that meant is that there were fires pretty much everywhere, or in many, many places, all at the same time, and firefighters went from instant to instant to instant, and had in a day in July, instead of getting 25 calls, they got 92. And there were many times when they were at the point of having a critical incident, that is to say, fewer than 10 engines available at any one time. There were several times there were only 3. So it was only a matter of luck, really, that we didn't have a more serious incident. And this is the reality of climate change. It is going to get worse, more unpredictable. The peaks are going to get higher. The temperatures are going to get higher. And of course, we also face a flood risk. So at this time, our financial model is really working against us, as we are likely to have to make savings rather than expand, and it feels all wrong to do that. The other point I should say is that since writing the report, there has been further information about the pay award, which is settled nationally, and an offer by the employers has been made for 5%. It hasn't been rejected, but it hasn't yet been accepted. So we know that the pay award is going to be at least 5%, which those of you who have read the report closely will realise creates a serious challenge for us in meeting our legal obligation to produce a balanced budget. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Do we have any questions? Okay, Councillor Hoy.
Thank you. Obviously, I'm not familiar with everything the fire authority does, so I apologise if this has already been answered. But I had a member of the Fire Brigades Union contact me a few weeks ago regarding the reduction in the retained firefighters having to go down to 3 crew members when they go out, and I just wondered if that was still happening, because they had some grave concerns that is against sort of national safety guidance to reduce crewing, and obviously that was a proposal, and I just wondered, had that proposal gone ahead or had it stopped? Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, there's a number of operational issues being considered, but I'm aware that none of them are in breach of safety rules, because we run a really effective and obviously completely lawful and safe service.
Are there any other questions? So we move on to written questions. 4 questions were notified by the deadline. I think responses have been circulated and will be published on the council's website. Other than wishing the Deputy Leader happy birthday, that concludes the business for the agenda today. Can I thank members for their contributions and for everybody who watched on live streaming? Thank you.